capitalism is destroying the planet? Or has socialism have destroyed everything wherever it has gone through? On the one hand, we see billionaires exploring the work of others, profits being prioritized above human lives, and an inequality that grows like an out-of-control virus. On the other hand, we see countries that tried to implement socialism and ended up plunged into scarcity, authoritarianism, repression, and widespread misery. So, what is worse? A system that allows freedom but generates concentration of absurd wealth, or a system that preaches equality but almost always turns into dictatorship? For decades, the world has divided itself between these two visions of society. And even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the debate is not over. He just changed stage. Today, he lives on social networks, universities, ballot boxes, and even street protests. People who defend the free market as a motor of civilization. People who see in the strong state the only way out. Against economic savagery. But are we still discussing real systems, or just exchanging dogmas and fanaticism? Are we comparing ideas, or just the caricatures we invented from them? In this video, let's face the front debate. No filter, no romanticism, and no hot cloths. Because when it comes to capitalism versus socialism, one thing is certain. Everyone has an opinion, but almost no one has the courage to face the facts. So, is there still a certain answer? Or are we just choosing? Which crisis we are willing to accept? Get ready. This debate is not neutral and should not be. Capitalism and socialism are not just economic models, they are world views, ideologies that shaped wars, cultural revolutions, and the fate of billions of people. Capitalism emerged in response to the collapse of feudalism, driven by the Industrial Revolution and the idea that the individual must be free to produce, accumulate, compete, and enrich. The base is simple: private property, free market, minimal state interference. The promise? Economic freedom generates innovation, progress, and growth. But soon the side effects emerged: exploration of labor, extreme inequality, concentration of wealth, and cyclical crises. The question emerged: who? It was in this scenario that socialism was born, a direct reaction to the failures of wild capitalism. With roots in Karl Marx's ideas, socialism proposed a new social organization, where the means of production would not belong to individuals or corporations, but to the collectivity. The promise: equality, social justice, end of exploitation. In practice, the world saw these systems brutally face each other. In the 20th century, the planet was divided between the capitalist powers of the West and the socialist regimes of the East. The Cold War was not just a dispute over nuclear weapons, it was an ideological battle between market freedom and total state control. On the one hand, the United States represented capitalism in its most aggressive form. On the other, the Soviet Union embodied the socialist ideal, which ended up sinking into bureaucracy, authoritarianism, scarcity, and repression. The collapse of the Soviet bloc at the end of the 80s was interpreted by many as the end of socialism. But he never died. He just reinvented himself. Today, the debate is more alive than ever. Modern capitalism produces billionaires that accumulate more wealth than entire countries, but it has also created unprecedented scientific, technological, and cultural advances. Meanwhile, proposals for more egalitarian systems, inspired by democratic socialism, return to the center of political discussions in various countries. The left calls this historical reparation. The right calls slow-dose poison. Countries like China, which claims to be socialist, adopt an aggressive market economy. Countries like Sweden or Norway balance capitalism and successful social welfare state, but not without criticism. And the ordinary citizen in the midst of all this asks, is there really an ideal system? Or are we just trying to survive, at least imperfect? The problem is that instead of discussing solutions, most people are attached to ideological fans. Some romanticize the market as if it were self-sufficient. Others idolize the state as if it were incorruptible. But no system is pure. Both were distorted, corrupted, and used as weapons of power. And as we continue to discuss theories, inequality continues to grow. Democracies continue to be eroded, and the concentration of power, whether in the hands of the state or corporations, continues to decide the future of billions. On the one hand, capitalism. For its advocates, it is the only system capable of producing scale wealth, promoting individual freedom and boosting innovation. It is the engine of progress, technology, competition, and meritocracy. It was capitalism that took the human being to the moon, which put a computer in his pocket and which turned garage companies into global empires. Capitalism rewards those who take risks, awards who works more, thinks differently, or offers something the market wants. According to this logic, inequality is not a defect, it is a natural consequence of freedom. Some prosper, others fail, but everyone has a chance to try. But this promise is far from being delivered in practice. Critics of capitalism argue that, in reality, he concentrates wealth in the hands of the few and explores most. Billions of people work in precarious conditions, with minimal salaries, while a minority lives with more money than will ever be able to spend. They remember that capitalism does not survive without inequality. What's more, that the discourse of meritocracy is an illusion, because not everyone starts from the same starting point. In addition, capitalism feeds unbridled consumption, environmental destruction, and dehumanization of relationships. It transforms everything, including time, health, and even feelings, into commodity. On the other hand is socialism. For your advocates, it is the only way to guarantee social justice. By placing the collective above profit, socialism seeks to reduce inequalities and guarantee basic rights: housing, health, education, dignity. Those who believe in this view argue that the state should protect the most vulnerable and distribute resources in a more balanced way. It is not about killing individual initiative, but of ensuring that no one is abandoned by the system. But historically, socialism also accumulated failures, and many of them were brutal. Socialist regimes in the 20th century produced scarcity, lines for bread, political repression, censorship, persecution of opponents, and economic collapses. Millions of people died under governments that claimed to act in the name of the people. Critics say socialism only works on paper, and that when it is applied in practice, it requires such a strong state that it ends up suffocating individual freedoms. In addition, they warn that the promise of equality often ends in total control. The excuse of equality has already been used to justify dictatorships, surveillance, forced interventions, and even genocide. But what about the countries that manage to find a middle ground? In Scandinavia, for example, countries such as Sweden, Norway, and Denmark have capitalist economies with a strong state presence. High taxes guarantee health, education, and social security, but the market is still working. These countries are often cited as examples of socialism that worked, but they themselves reject this label. In China, the government controls strategic areas of the economy and limits political freedoms, but encourages competition and profit as a form of growth. Is it capitalism with socialist aesthetics, or socialism with capitalist addictions? In the United States, the maximum symbol of free market, the concentration of wealth, reaches historical levels. At the same time, pressure for public health systems, free education, and broader social programs grows. Increasingly, even the capitalists are asking for a little intervention. The question that remains is, are we discussing the systems or the distorted versions that were implemented by political interests? Perhaps the problem is neither capitalism nor socialism. Perhaps the problem is the human being, because no system resists greed, corruption, thirst for power. And if both models are failing, it may be because we are expecting political structures to solve problems that are first and foremost ethical and moral. Capitalism fails when you forget the dignity. Socialism fails when you forget freedom. For decades, we have been taught to choose one side. Or you believe in market freedom, or believes in the social justice imposed by the state, or you defend the competition, or believes that the collective should come first. But perhaps the big lie was this forced choice. Because while the people are divided between defending systems, who is at the top continues to win with any of them. Authoritarian governments arise both under the discourse of equality and under that of freedom. Billionaires thrive both in liberal democracies and in regimes that claim to be popular. Perhaps the problem has never been just the system. Perhaps the problem is the one who writes the rules and who benefits from them. Capitalism is excellent for generating wealth, but it is terrible to distribute it. Socialism promises equality, but often delivers control. The first sells freedom, but delivers alienation. The second promises justice, but charges obedience. And then we return to the initial question. Is there still a certain answer? Perhaps the right answer is to be suspicious of all ready answers. Perhaps the challenge is not to choose between systems, but build a new model that doesn't fall into the same traps as always. In the meantime, we follow in a cycle. On the one hand, people who die poor in rich countries. On the other hand, people who die silent in egalitarian countries. In the end, both sides are partly right, and they are wrong with the most dogmatic. Now it's with you. Which system do you defend? Do you think there is a viable alternative to capitalism, or do you believe socialism can still work if it is done the right way? Comment here below. The debate is free, and here, no one will shut you up. If this video made you think, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Here the question is welcome, the controversy is necessary, and critical thinking is mandatory.